seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I've changed for the better this time. I thought I would never be fine. I strive just to say I'm alright, and for the first time in a long time I'm alright. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Winter Book Fest. My name is Sharon Sinclair, and I am delighted to be your MC for the evening. Our production is coming to you from the gorgeous sanctuary of Annesley United Church, located in Markdale, which is in the municipality of Grey Highlands, right in the center of beautiful Grey County. We are so grateful to our hosts for this exquisite performance space. And the technical workings for tonight are courtesy of Tim Riley and Leaking Ambient Studio in Flesherton. How Tim is able to coordinate all this and live stream it to you in your homes or wherever you may be listening is mind-boggling to me. But Tim is master of his craft, and tonight we will all benefit from his expertise. It's exciting, really, to me to think that people in different countries, in different time zones, are all able to converge tonight in this sacred space. And we hope that you will stay with us for the next maybe an hour and a half, approximately, because we have some very special presentations that we'd love to share with you. I think that we can all agree that we are living in some very stressful times. Doing something positive is a great way to relieve that stress and anxiety. And reading a book is a very positive distraction from the cycle of negativity and negative thoughts that can increase our stress and our anxiety. And so, in a way, this is what we want Grey County Reads to do as well, to provide a distraction that will help us here in Ontario to get through another Grey County winter. Every year, for the past 5 years, we have made a selection of some excellent Canadian authored books and put them center stage. And this year, 7 champions have read the 2022 selections, and they will be presenting them to you today. And we hope that their presentations will inspire you to read these books, and at the very least, to go to your local library and to also tune in to southgrey.ca, where a full presentation of their defenses can be found. And I'll be talking to you a little bit more about that later, about the process. But right now I want to tell you about something else we're going to have tonight. Apparently the words bibliophile and bookworm refer to individuals who frequently love to read. So tonight we have a small panel of individuals who are going to engage in a literary discussion on the topic of story, the importance of story. So that will be later, and you're not going to want to miss our musical guest because we were fortunate to have Paige Warner share her musical talent with us. So that'll be a very big highlight. And so just settle back, relax, and enjoy being with us this evening. We're very grateful that you're here with us. And oh, one more thing. In the weeks leading up to this event, through social media, if you indicated your interest in the event or shared information about it, we had recorded your names, and from those names, we'll be making some draws for some prizes. So you might just be lucky on that count as well. But before we do that, we have some very important announcements to make, and I'm going to be calling on Ron Barnett to do that. For many years, Ron has been an advocate of cultural events, local food, and farmers markets. And after various roles in marketing, management, sales, and publishing, Ron likes to say that he's famous, it's just that nobody knows it. But that might change after tonight, Ron. It was 5 years ago that Ron conceived of a contest based on the popular Canada Reads concept, and Grey County Reads was born. As one of the founders of South Grade News, Ron has used the readership of his website to promote local libraries and Canadian authored books. And gradually he began to appeal to local businesses for support. And as a result, we have this wonderful annual contest. And I'm going to call on Ron now to tell you more about the amazing community involvement.
Hello, everyone. We are meeting tonight on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe. I practiced that. I knew I was going to mess it up. Anishinaabe Nation, the people of the three first, known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations, and further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. And we recognize the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Now, there are many people who make Grey County Reads possible, too many of them to name all in one go, so we'll be making them known throughout the night. Off the top, though, I do want to acknowledge our Grey County Library Boards: Grey Highlands, Hanover, Meaford, Owen Sound, Southgate, the Town of Blue Mountains, and West Grey. When you hear about tonight's books, we hope that you'll head right out and reserve one of them from your local library or put it on your reading list for the near future. Each of these books are Canadian authored, highlighting the great local talent that we have here in this country. I also want to thank the following chambers of commerce for their participation: Grey Highlands, Hanover, Meaford, the Town of Blue Mountains, and West Grey. Our book champions reside from one of our 7 library board communities. They are librarians and business people with busy lives who've graciously donated their time to read these books and represent their communities. Our book champions reside from one of our 7 library board communities. They are Jennifer Beechin, owner of Fresh Start Duct Cleaning Services in Grey Highlands; Norma Graham of the Hanover Public Library; Julia White, owner of Julia White and Associates of the Cooperators Insurance in Meaford; Tim Nichols Harrison of the Owen Sound and North Grey Union Public Library; Pam Farrow, an architectural technologist in Southgate; Elora Tarlow, owner of Georgian Bay Marketplace in the Town of Blue Mountains; and Kim Culkin of the West Grey Public Library. And you'll be hearing from each of them tonight. Back to you, Sharon.
Cooperation and involvement to make Grey County Reads a friendly annual competition. Before we go any further, though, I think there is one more acknowledgement that we would like to make. And it seems appropriate within this beautiful sanctuary that we should send our thoughts and our prayers to the situation in Ukraine. I was very fortunate to come across a poem on Facebook by Samantha Sanella, who is a gifted poet and artist. And hopefully we're going to have an image that she put with this poem. Maybe not. But anyway, you can Google her because she is amazing. And she has written this about the sunflower, which is the national symbol of Ukraine. Behind the smile of the sunflower, a nation's heart beats in red. The hope of optimistic yellow, waving against the heroic dead. Tonight, we are all Ukrainian, fragile against the unknown. Humanity should know no borders, this one earth, our sacred home. I search for reason and meaning. Of course, there is none. There are takers on every corner. God forbid I am ever one. Evil lurks in hardened hearts and grows like a thorny vine and wraps itself around others and strangles most in time. Do angels watch from above or ignore our human horror? Does God weep at our stupidity and watch with continued sorrow? These battles and useless wars, skirmishes over money and things, harbingers of greed and gluttony and the evil that it brings. I hope the sunflowers grow as hearts flourish in spring, as prayers give them power and love gives them wing. Thank you, Samantha Sanella. So I think tonight we are all very conscious of being incredibly blessed to live in countries where we're not facing that turmoil. And that's something to celebrate, and that's what we hope to do tonight. Celebrate our freedom to enjoy such luxuries as coming together, to be able to celebrate the wonderful art of reading and the people who make it possible. So here's a little bit about how it all works. As Ron described, there are 7 Canadian-authored books that have been read by 7 community champions in this year's contest. Their reports and analyses of these books are available on southgrey.ca. Tonight, the champions will only tease you with a little bit about their books and why you should vote for them and support them. You can visit the southgrey.ca website to read a more detailed analysis, a complete accounting of each book, and to cast your vote for one of these 7 champions. You can cast up to 1 vote for your favorite each and every day. Now, the elimination playoff will begin Monday, March the 7th. Voting is open now, but you need to continue supporting your favorite throughout the weeks ahead because each week, the book tallying the least number of votes will be eliminated. It's not like the Amazing Race, where on certain legs you may be eliminated. In this contest, each week one will be eliminated. And this process will continue until only 1 book remains. And in the end, the winning book and its champion will be declared in mid to late April. That champion's community will receive $200 worth of books for their library, courtesy of Speaking Volumes, Books and Audio in Flesherton. Remember to vote often, hopefully every day, because each vote you cast will not only help determine the winner, but will give you 1 chance of winning one of 3 prizes of Speaking Volume books and audio gift certificates, chosen randomly and announced at the end of the contest in April. Oh, there's the lovely artwork by Samantha Sanella. And I stand here tonight as proof of how important it is for you to cast your vote. In 2018, I championed the book Crow Lake, written by Mary Lawson. In the end, it came down to a tight race, but because of my amazing community support, the book that I championed was declared the one that every Canadian should read. And I can assure you that Mary Lawson was absolutely thrilled that her book was still being enjoyed by people in Canada and hopefully further afield. So she was just so delighted that people still embraced her book. And she sent a personal note to that effect and to congratulate me in a signed copy of her book. And that's something I'll always treasure. But seeing how deeply Mary Lawson was touched by the response from the community, it made me remember a poem by our Canadian pioneer poet Pauline Johnson. She is quoted as saying that poems are the children of our imagination. Poems are the children of our imagination. So by extension, I think that we could say that books are the children of the imagination of the authors. And as such, the authors love them. They want to protect them, see them do well in the world. I discovered in defending Mary Lawson's book that I became very bonded with the material and passionate in its defense of the story. I think I felt a little bit like a godmother who had the privilege bestowed upon her of presenting her godchild to the world in all its glory without ever having to undergo any of the labor pains in the delivery. So it is really a sense of sacred trust, and I think that every contestant who's been in this Grey County Reads or any such venture will discover that and will really feel that sense of pride and also just the privileged responsibility of defending someone else's work. Recently, thanks to my friend and author Sheila Balls, I became acquainted with the work of a man named Stephen Charleston, who is a retired Episcopal priest, an Indigenous elder, and a wonderful writer. And I'd like to share something he wrote about the power of stories. We are all silent witnesses to the drama of our lives. We see behind the curtains. We know the origins of our story, the characters who fill its pages, and the main events that have carried us over perilous seas to where we find ourselves today. Only a small fraction of this saga ever gets told, even around the firelight of family. But we keep it in our hearts, the way books were once written by hand. The story lives within us and finds its completion through us. We carry it forward in sacred procession, not knowing when our own role will end, but bound by faith to take our part for as long as love allows. So this year, 7 champions will take their part in that sacred procession, carrying forward the dreams, ideas, and the imagination of the authors whose stories they will be defending. And now we're going to meet those champions. The order of presentation was determined by that time-honored tradition of pulling a number from a hat. So please welcome the contestant who picked the number 1 position. Welcome, Norma Graham.
Good evening. I am a librarian at the Hanover Public Library. I've been there for 12 years. And one of the great joys of my job is recommending books to people. I've recommended tonight's book, the one that I'm defending, to a lot of people, and they have, without exception, loved it. And I hope you will love it too. I'm very honored to be representing Hanover in this year's Grey County Reads. The book I'm defending is called Deafening by Frances Itani. It was written, it was published in 2003. Itani was a writer of poetry and short stories before she became a novelist. And you can really see that in the beauty of the language, the carefulness of the language that she uses. Elegantly written and profoundly moving. Those words were the ones used to describe Deafening in a review. Better words could not have been chosen for this book. She is the queen of the quietly and emotionally told story, and she really shines in this book. The book is set in Eastern Ontario in the years before and during the Great War. Deafening was inspired by the experiences of Itani's grandmother, who was deaf. The familiarity of small-town Ontario and Canada resonate deeply. This is our grandparents' and great-grandparents' place and time. The story evokes the war-at-home aspect of the First World War in Canada, as well as the experiences of men at the front. It also explores on a personal level an event that is very relevant to us in the present day, the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918-19. The novel opens in 1902 and introduces us to the main character, Grania O'Neill. Grania is a small girl living in Deseronto, Ontario, a town on the Bay of Quinte near Belleville. Grania's family owns a hotel in this busy town, and her parents are very hardworking and busy, so Grania spends a great deal of time with her Irish grandmother, whom she knows as Mamo. Grania had lost her hearing due to scarlet fever and is profoundly deaf. Her mother carries a terrible burden of guilt for this, and it puts a strain on their relationship. So Grania draws ever closer to her grandmother. Mamo insists that Grania not be excluded from normal life, and she works with her to ensure she speaks clearly and takes part in all the family's activities. Grania has a sister and two brothers who also support and care for her, and she has a happy life in the heart of her family despite her deafness. But Grania struggles in school, and even with Mamo's patient teaching, she begins to fall behind. Because Grania's mother cannot accept that Grania's deafness is permanent, she resists her own mother's urging to send Grania to the Ontario School for the Deaf in Belleville. Finally, however, she is convinced, and Grania moves to the school. At first, she is desolate at being away from her family, but little by little, she begins to adapt to life at the boarding school, where she learns lip reading and sign language and how to get along in the world. After her schooling is finished, she stays on for a while to work there, which is when she meets Jim Lloyd in 1915. She is a young woman by now. Jim is the assistant to Dr. Whalen, the doctor who looks after the health of the children at the School for the Deaf. He meets Grania, who is helping out at the infirmary. It's love at first sight. What Jim saw in Grania's face was strength, a strength so still it was possible she did not know it was there. Her eyes were brown, and when he looked at her, he felt that she knew something, perhaps something peaceful or wise that no one else could possibly know. They fall in love and marry, and then Jim leaves for the war. At this point, the story splits into two narrative streams. Jim's experiences as a stretcher bearer at the front, and Grania's experiences at home, waiting, hoping, and hanging on. Just as the war is coming to an end, and the two lovers are finally looking forward to being reunited, the influenza epidemic strikes. Grania is hit with it, and for a time, her survival is uncertain. Her beloved Mamo nurses her through the crisis, and then a greater sorrow strikes. Jim, meanwhile, is suffering from shell shock after the death of his best friend, and both Grania and Jim struggle to see a path forward from their grief. What came through strongly in Deafening for me, especially the second time I read it, is that both the silence and the noise that divide us can be overcome with the love and the caring that connect us. The lesson that we can take from reading a book like Deafening is that we are more resilient than we think. The generation that is described in this book went through 4 years of a vicious and destructive war. There was no community in this country that was undamaged by loss, by grief in the Great War. Over 60,000 Canadians died fighting in the First World War out of a population of that time of just 8 million. And just as that trauma was ending, the Spanish flu pandemic hit and killed 55,000 more Canadians, and a lot of them were the young people, young, healthy people. And yet, the Canadian nation healed, it grew, it thrived, and we too will heal. We will get through this. And that is why this is the book that everyone in Grey County should read now. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a really wonderful, impassioned appeal to you for support, and such a timely occurrence again from a book written so many years ago now, really, wasn't it? And yet it's so relevant for today. So actually my sister-in-law is reading that as we speak, and she can't put it down. So that's her recommendation too. So now we're going to hear from Julia White.
So good morning, it's Julia White from the Cooperators in Meaford, and I'm representing the Meaford Chamber of Commerce for the Grey County Reads today. I apologize I can't be there. Fortunately, I'm going to be a grandma soon, and so I'm heading down to see my son and daughter-in-law, and we're having a dinner tonight to all get together and welcome the new baby in June. So a little bit about me. I did move up to the area about 3 years ago full-time when I took over the Cooperators Agency. In the past, I have been a weekender and an avid skier up here for over 25 years, but it was wonderful in July of 19 to be able to now call this my home. I joined the Chamber of Commerce shortly after that, and obviously we've had COVID ever since. But it's wonderful to be able to give back to the community. And when I was asked to be a part of this, I jumped at the chance, one, because I'm a ferocious reader, and two, just to get to know more people and what's going on in the area. And I hope I can spur someone else on to not only read this book, but continue to read it and be part of Grey County Reads in the future. So the book that I am advocating for today is called The Girls by Laurie Lanson. Laurie Lanson is a Canadian author, and she's actually a screenwriter as well. She wrote some films south of Wawa, Wolf Girl. Most of that was done prior to 2002. And then she went on to start novels, and she was shortlisted for the Rogers Writer True Fiction Prize at one point. And then she wrote The Girls actually in 2005. So this is not a new book that I read and chose. She has continued to write about 3 more novels since then. She does live in Los Angeles now, but she was from the Chatham area, and that became very evident in the book that I will share with you shortly. So she does live down there with her children, but the book and why I chose the book, Jeff gave us a list ahead of time, and I ended up choosing the book one, because of just the title of The Girls. That intrigued me. Having obviously the Canadian author and an Ontario author meant something to me. Like most of us who are readers, we obviously have incredible imaginations, and we like to imagine where we're going and what the places look like. So knowing that it was written in southwestern Ontario, as I'm reading the book, I'm thinking of like Leamington area, Brights Grove, different things, and hopefully you will pick that up when you read the book as well. But it was very easy for me to picture where the book was placed as I was going through it, and when I had read, I guess, the synopsis in the very beginning, and that's why I had chosen it. It was also a theme that I honestly would never have picked up on my own. I'll share that with you in a moment, but it was a matter of, really, if I wanted to do this, I wanted to challenge myself. I didn't want just an easy read. I wanted something that could, as I said, challenge me and hopefully challenge you as a reader as well. And then obviously vote for this book. But I was looking for something different, and I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, this is different. So a little bit about the book and the introduction around it. So I'm going to read you, because this is the only way to really get you into this, is I'm going to read you the first paragraph of the book. I have never looked into my sister's eyes. I have never bathed alone. I have never stood in the grass at night and raised my arms to the beguiling moon. I've never used an airplane bathroom or worn a hat. I have never been kissed like that. I've never driven a car or slept through the night, never a private walk or a solo talk. I've never climbed a tree or faded into a crowd. So many things I've never done, but oh, how I have been loved. And if such things were to be, I'd live 1,000 lives as me to be loved so exponentially. And that literally set the tone to the book. But what is the book actually about? It is about two twins, Rose and Ruby. They are joined by the head. They were born in 1974. And so the example they give you is to raise your right hand, press it to the base of the palm of your lobe to your right ear, let your ears fan out, and that's where the sisters were joined. Their faces were not quite side by side. Their skulls were fused together in a circular pattern running from the temple and curving along the frontal lobe. And if you glanced at us, you would think it was two women embracing. So the book is set it starts when they are 29. They are the oldest surviving twins in the world. And they have decided at that point in time, one is a writer of sorts, or thinks she is a writer of sorts. And so they decided that they should write a book about their life and about a biography about their lives. And they've decided that they should both write. Ruby, of course, as I said, is gung-ho. Rose is not so much. She's not a writer. She doesn't like to write. She doesn't think that this is what she wants to do. But her sister convinces her. So as you're reading this book, you're getting both stories from either one of them. You would think you would be getting the same version, but what is so intriguing about this book, and obviously they're twins, they're conjoined, they live the same lives, they eat together, they sleep together, they do everything together. You would think you'd be getting the same story, but the biggest, I guess, aha moment for me is how individual the girls were, how different the stories were, how different they saw their lives, and even a small event, how it triggered something completely different in each of them, from how they were feeling to what they were seeing to the people that were involved. And part of it as well was I kept having to realize that this was fiction. I guess that was, again, my biggest moment as well, is I kept going back literally to Google and checking to make sure that this wasn't real. The work that Lori had to do in order to, I'm going to say easily convince us that this was almost a true story, right from, as I said, right from her description of living down southwestern Ontario, driving the 401 corridor to get to Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, the work she would have had to have done to go in to understand what twins go through that are conjoined, that if one is ill, the other one is ill. If one obviously passes away, the other one passes away. The work that would have gone into this to allow us to literally live in these girls' lives would have been phenomenal. But it as you go through each of their parts of their lives, and they do start right from almost square one, and take you through their childhood and their teenagers' lives, and their the two people that had brought them in to take care of them. Just an incredible story. But as I said, as you start to read about Rose and Ruby, how different they see their lives, and what they do. As far as, excuse me, kind of the theme to all of it is, again, it was so easy to forget that it was fiction. It had such a strong time and place of being in their lives, and being blessed to have known these two women. They wanted it published. They worked incredibly hard and fast to get it published. I don't want to. I don't want to give away anything, but it was so amazing how, as I said, they could live such a different life, and yet be so entwined in each other's in each other's lives, and in the love that they had for each other. As I said, for Lori, the fact that she can have two stories at the same time, it just reveals how much of an incredible author she is at this craft. It's inspiring to see this story be told, and the drama that the girls go through, but the laughter that they go through, and how they truly led incredible lives, even when we would look at it and go, oh, their lives must have been so difficult and so sad, and they couldn't, the challenge that they would have had to go through. You see the challenges, but you also see the triumph that they have in that. And even for Rose, as she's struggling with the writing, I'm going to say, and it'll be interesting to get your viewpoint, that in the end, I actually thought she was a better writer than her sister, who proclaims to be a writer. She was more honest. She didn't care what the reader thought. She didn't care who she was writing to. So I would say hers there was more of a rawness to what she was saying than anything else. So a little bit about the book. It was written in 2005. I still believe it is timeless, obviously, today. It still spoke to me. It's a book about empathy and compassion and forgiveness and growth. It shows how you can be individual but rely on each other, how far two people can come, and that we can love completely and fully, while still being limited in other ways, but how we can be, one of the lines of the book was how we can be ordinary while still living extraordinary lives. And these two girls surely led extraordinary lives. So in summary, it truly is a story that I didn't want to end. I actually read it twice. As it got closer to the final page, again, I almost read less because I didn't want to find out what was going to happen in the final chapter. The girls took me on an incredible journey of their short, full lives, and they definitely will teach you something as they taught me. And as I said, I always said the only sadness I have is I would have loved to have met them, and to say that about a fictional book, in my opinion, is incredible. So I do want to thank Grey County Reads for allowing me to go on this incredible journey. I wasn't sure what I had signed myself up for. Lori Lanson's definitely brought this book to life. And I wish you the best read in it and enjoy. So Julia White, from Meaford Chamber of Commerce, and have a great night. So good morning, Julia White.
Thank you, Julia. That was an excellent presentation, and what a book with so many relevant, very important themes. It makes me want to go to southgrey.ca to read her further in-depth analysis, which you can find at that website. So good work. We're going to take a little bit of a break now, and as I mentioned earlier, we have the musical gifts of Paige Warner to offer you tonight. And I'm going to read what's been written about her work. With an evocative voice that captivates her audience, Paige Warner creates music that sits between R&B and singer-songwriter, with soul-inspired vocal licks layered on catchy hooks and rhythms. With over 59,000 combined listens on Spotify alone, Paige's recent singles have drawn love from media and listeners alike. She is skilled with more than just her voice, regularly accompanying herself with piano, guitar, or inviting her backup band to the stage. So enjoy the work of Paige Warner.
Well, this first song is called Lions, and it's one I released a couple years ago. I wrote it about having those difficulties that you just keep returning to, even though you know that they're gonna mess with you. So this is Lions. advantage of my kindness. You know I cannot say no. I'm far from a lioness, but this pain continues to roll. Oh, I keep running to the same old lions. Keep seeing the same old signs. My song should have changed by now. Someone help me, I don't know how. I keep running to the same old lions. The danger sign invites me in. Fear I'm only burying. My deep longing for your sin, but this sickness that somehow I'm where's my road? I keep running to the same old lions. Keep seeing the same old signs. My song should have changed by now. Someone help me, I don't know how. I keep running to the same old lions. I keep running to the same old lions. Keep seeing the same old signs. My song should have changed by now. Someone help me, I don't know how. I keep running.
Wow, what a voice. I was almost in a trance. It was Ron that brought us brought her to our attention. So thank you, Ron. We both agree that she's headed for stardom, and you may be just able to say we saw her here first, right here in Annesley United Church. Okay, let's have another champion. This time I'm going to call Alora Tarlow, and she was just a wonderful, yes, a new discovery for me tonight. I met her for the first time, and we're anxious to hear what your book is about, Alora.
Well, hello. Yes, my name is Alora Tarlow. I grew up in the town of the Blue Mountains, and when I was younger, I worked as a library page at the Blue Mountains Public Library. So it is an honor to represent them for Grey County Reads and be sponsored by the Thornbury Chambers of Commerce. I read The Library of Legends by the Canadian author Janie Chang. This was an incredible book where Janie Chang interweaves history, mystery, fantasy, romance, and politics in the most intriguing ways. She introduces us to three main characters. There's Leanne, Xiao, and Sparrow, all of which were young adults caught in the Second Sino-Japanese War of 1937. Leanne and Xiao are both students at Minghua University. Leanne is a scholar student who is initially shy, but readers see her confidence and her daring side unfold throughout the novel. Xiao is a confident young man who comes from a wealthy, elite family. And as we see Leanne and Xiao drawn together, readers also witness the economic barriers of that time and of that culture. Sparrow is a loyal servant for Xiao's family, but she is revealed to us as a deity, specifically one known as Willow Star. Her backstory is a key element to Leanne and Xiao's journey, both in bringing them together, but also being the one thing that keeps them apart. Sparrow is also tasked with informing other spirits, gods, and goddesses that it's time to leave the earth and that it's time to return to the stars. As readers, we learn why it's time for them to leave and what this means for humanity. As the Japanese soldiers invade the coast, the students at Minghua University must evacuate and migrate inland. Readers witness the tragedies of war depicted in the novel, but we also see how love, friendship, and support can overcome all. Within the Library of Legends, we are taken on an adventure with fox spirits, city gods, river goddesses, and other fantastical beings. I love how Janie Chang describes these beings, because to many characters in the novel, they are a trick of the eye or a display of Mother Nature. However, the author reveals a beautiful sunset to be phoenixes rising into the sky. It's a capturing read, and through this heartbreak and sadness that the characters must endure, we are reminded of the things that truly matter most. Through the chaos that our society experiences today, I believe that anyone can appreciate this message. Thank you to the Blue Mountains Public Library for supplying this book and other wonderful reads for our community. Please go check out Grey County Reads on southgreynews.ca to learn more about the book and what other contestants have read. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. That sounds fascinating. My goodness, there's something for everybody in this selection of books, and that was very well presented. And the next one will be Kim Culkin.
Hello, my name is Kim Culkin. Sorry I couldn't join you in person tonight, but I'm very interested to see what the other readers have to say about their books, and I'd love to tell you about mine. I work with the West Grey Public Library, and the book that I am describing to you is called The Apollo Murders, and it's by Chris Hadfield. First, a little bit about the library. We have 3 branches in West Grey. The largest branch is the Durham branch. Then there are smaller branches in Ayton and Newstead. And we have a small but mighty staff and a small but mighty program and collection. We're very proud of our library. We think we do a really good job for our community, and we're really happy when we can participate in things like this. So, The Apollo Murders, Chris Hadfield. You probably have already known about Chris Hadfield if you've lived in Canada for more than 5 years. He is a retired astronaut, but he's also been a fighter pilot and a test pilot, and apparently has written a book for children, his own autobiography. He's a musician and actually played one of his selections from space. So he's a bit of a Renaissance man, and most Canadians are pretty proud that he's been part of the space program internationally. He wrote this novel, I'm pretty sure all of it was written during COVID. So it was interesting when he was interviewed about it, he said that he did not have to research too deeply beyond the internet. If he had a question he couldn't answer, like were headphones worn and what the circumstances were, he would just phone one of his friends who was an astronaut. So most of us can't do that. And so that makes this a really interesting thriller from that point of view. It's a political thriller, which is pretty timely right now. You probably know political thriller is that the facts or the the action takes place set against a political background. So there are usually very many secrets, complicated cast of characters, lots of locations, and the action sort of proceeds in one location and another and another and another, and you're brought up to speed as the action ratchets up. And that's exactly what happens in this one. It's a very meaty kind of thriller where you meet sort of stock characters that you can connect to or know right away are villains. The protagonist in this one is named Kaz Zemeckis, and he is I don't think I'm giving too much away here. A one-eyed pilot who is serving as a liaison among the different communities involved, the different agencies and so on, and also has an finger in the political pie. So he's often used as an interpreter, and he's also very handy with the exposition because he tells us stuff that we need to know. As with all thrillers, this is really twisty. So I don't want to talk about the plot itself too much. It's just too easy to give something away. But the idea basically starts with, we start the book with Kaz's accident in which he does lose his eye. Very graphic, very detailed, so be warned. And then opens in his next job, which is as this liaison. We meet a lot of truly historical characters. Some of the characters from the Apollo space program have major roles in this, Alan Shepard being one. And if you're younger than maybe 70, you will probably not know a lot of the characters, maybe a little younger. But they had high profile in the 60s and 70s, and this novel set in 1973. Chris Hadfield said that when he was writing it, he had to be really careful that he didn't put things too far in the future, because of course he wasn't in the space program at that point. So it starts off with this realization that the Soviets, that's what they were called then, the Soviets, had a space station that was doing some kinds of mysterious activities, and the Apollo 18 mission, which is a mission that didn't actually fly, is recruited to serve a political purpose as well, and that is to investigate the space station's goings-on. So why read this? Well, it's a fun, meaty, like, dear heavens, what's going to happen next? It's realistic enough to suck you in, and then just fantastical enough to sort of reassure you. But as Hadfield said, 95% of the action in this actually happened. So there was a secret, the whole bunch of Soviet secrets around their space station. There were incidents. There were disasters that we were not privy to as members of the public in the 70s. So that part's fascinating. Given the current situation just now between Russia and Ukraine, it's most interesting to read the kind of book this is that has all the backroom action so that you understand how personalities play a role, how pressures from elsewhere can have an effect, and how people can get roped into doing things that they otherwise wouldn't likely do. So for that reason, it's most interesting. It moves along at a really quick clip. I both read it and listened to it, and the listening part it makes it more immediate, I suppose. But there's a beautiful chapter. The beginning of chapter 11 describes the sort of origin of the universe, and it's well worth reading just on its own. It's a lovely piece, and as lyrical as a scientist would get, I would say. So I hope you'll read it. I hope you'll vote for it. I hope you'll support our library. I hope you'll support all libraries in Grey Bruce. They're well worth the support, and people have been working really hard the last couple of years during the pandemic to ensure that people in the community are connected, stay connected, and still get opportunities to do lifelong learning, to develop their interests, to help their children. So thank you all very much for being here. Thank you for your votes. Thank you for your support. Read the book. Hello.
Thank you, Kim, for presenting Yet another amazing idea for a book for this competition. It really makes you realize the variety of authors that are represented in this competition. And also, I think Kim made some very relevant points about just the general scope of this entire concept with Grey County Reads. So good job, Kim. And she also made me think about how important it is that you get support behind you, because it is a friendly little competition. People have to be eliminated, and there's no shame in that whatsoever. But if you want to win the contest, you got to get the votes. So do whatever you can to support, get support behind you. I know that I used Facebook a lot whenever I was in my year of this, and just constantly acknowledging the people who are taking the time to vote for you. That's how you win. And now, just in case you think we're just female-oriented, I'm very happy to welcome Tim Nichols Harrison for his perspective.
I want to thank everyone for participating in this event tonight, where you're at home, you're watching it tonight, or you're watching it at another time. What a fantastic opportunity to get together and talk about books. I can't think of anything better that I want to do on a cold night in March. I'm here to defend Manikanetish by Naomi Fontaine. My name is Tim Nichols Harrison. I'm the chief librarian at the Owen Sound North Grey Union Public Library. I've worked there for almost 34 years, the past 8 years in the current role that I have. I'm really fortunate to work with an amazing group of people who are always recommending books and suggesting things. And this book actually was suggested by Philly Markowitz and a friend who was going to defend it, and then I've had the opportunity to step in, and I'm so glad that I can. Tonight I want to thank Ron and everyone involved in Grey County Reads, Sharon, Tim, for putting this all together and making this possible. It's a really unique event. When I look at this book, it's a book about a teacher, and it's a book about a teacher teaching in a small school. Well, I did my Bachelor of Education. It's in adult ed, and I went to a small school, Wyerton, 300 students. The school here in Uashat is about 200 students, but very similar. So I can really relate to this book, and that's why everyone should read it. No, that's not why you should read it. That's not why we read books. We read books to learn things and discover things, and that's where we're starting. I don't know a lot about the First Nation lives. I don't know a lot about the Innu community 1,600 kilometers away from here. Maybe closer, maybe further, depending upon where you are, and your life circumstance may be different. But books give us a chance to discover and to learn. Tonight, you've had an opportunity to hear about books about conjoined twins, astronauts, the Spanish flu, being deaf, the First World War, the Chino-Japanese War. All of those situations are things that help us to develop empathy. And at this time, in this world, that is so important. I want to challenge you to read Manikanetish. I want to challenge you to read all the books, but I want you to read this one, and I want you to vote for it. And I'm going to tell you why. Because it's an extraordinary book. It's beautiful. It's lyrical. It was a Governor General finalist in 2019 in French language. Naomi Fontaine wrote in French. This version came out in 2021 and was translated by Louise von Floto, and she's done a marvelous, marvelous job with it. The writing style uses this poetic, lyrical, choppy way of sharing information. So you're not being caught up in long sentences. It gives you a really quick and enticing read where you just fall into it and you want to go further. And what happens next? Oh, I need to know. Now I'm going. And you're just moving along with it. It is really wonderful. For that reason alone, you should read it, because so often books try hard to tell you everything with lots of words. Naomi Fontaine tells you a lot with a few words. And what she told me was about return, reconciliation, and resiliency. This is a novel about a young woman who's been away from her community for 15 years. She left it as a child and has gone away to University of Laval and is now returning to the small school. It covers all ages, but the high school part, to teach French. And it's her first year of teaching. And she has to get reacquainted with the community and with her extended family, her aunts and uncles, her other relations, and take on a very responsible role in the community, something that is totally new to her. Uashat means at the Big Bay. It's an interesting name because it describes the First Nation, the Innu Nation, at Sept-Îles in northern Quebec. But the actual community is landlocked because the 3,000 people who live in that area and the other part that's about 16 kilometers away are vastly smaller than the 30,000 people that make up Sept-Îles, the community of the people that were not First Nation, we're not Innu. So we're starting and we're learning and encountering a community that's adapted a nomadic life and is now in one place. And one of the really cool things about this book is that the main character, Yami, she experiences more than what's just in the community, more than just what's in the school. That's there all the time. But we also discover what happens to her on the weekends when she goes further afield and does connect with those relatives. And when she takes a school trip 500 kilometers further away with the students. Now I want to share a little piece from that. She says, describing 500 miles north of Uashat, "We were in another country, far from our books and desks, far away from social media and the gossip of the reserve, and far from the pain and drama of family life, farther away from anywhere I'd ever set foot, and yet we were so close to ourselves." And that's a really important part of this book, is it's about Yami discovering herself, returning to the community, and from her interactions with the students, with her relatives, discovering herself and discovering who she wants to be and making the life decisions that you'll get to experience as you're reading it from what happens. But this isn't the story of a savior teacher coming in and, bringing students who have terrible lives and inspiring them. That's not this novel. Okay? This novel is about the connections that we all can make with each other and what she learns from being a part of the community and understanding the value of that whole community and all of the challenges that the different members of that community have. I need to tease you with something. I want to tease you with a reason to read this. And so, as a final encouragement, I offer in Fontaine's own words, hope, chocolate, and possibly love. He leaves with his guitar in one hand, a cigarette in the other. He's tall, slender. His dark hair is in a long ponytail, a 3-day beard, bright, animated eyes. He says we'll see each other again. I'm helpless, like chocolate melting in the sun. I slipped my phone number into his pocket. I hope you'll travel the 1,600 kilometers to Uashat. Take a chance, pick up Manikanetish, give it a read. I think you, too, will be waiting for Fontaine to write a sequel and tell us more of Yami's life and circumstances. Manikanetish is in development for a television series, and that's even more of a reason that you want to read this book now, because you want to experience it before you encounter it on the screen. You're going to hear, and you have heard about a number of great books. I encourage you to read them all. I need you to vote for mine. Well, mine in that I'm defending it, Manikanetish by Naomi Fontaine. Thank you.
Your enthusiasm makes me want to go right to your library. You must be very effective in your role. Thank you. That sounds like an amazing book. Okay, I think it's time to hear more from Paige. So let's have another selection from Paige, and then we'll have our final two contestants to come.
This next song is called From the Start. It's actually one of the first songs I wrote. It was a pretty cool experience. I was sitting on a dock at a cottage, and the whole song kind of came to me in one moment. So I ran inside and wrote it down as fast as I could. And yeah, it was one of my first experiences with that exciting feeling of songwriting. So this is called From the Start. Jacket on the first date, telling stories like we're in the 6th grade, drinking wine straight from the bottle. You ask me to stay, I say I'll only stay a while. Your eyes dance and smile with nerves lost so wild. Can we just stay a while? Arms around me like a child. You're smart, you know what you want. You wanted me from the start, me from the start. You're smart, you know what you want. You wanted me from the start, me from the start. You tell me about empty drawers, unopened gifts for her, the giant bear you saved. Till your angel came, your hands in my hair. Tell me what you want and where. I'm already in your future from now until forever. You're smart, you know what you want. You wanted me from the start, me from the start. You're smart, you know what you want. You wanted me from the start, me from the start. You make me feel whole. You make me feel. Hope that love can be real. Fear that it's a fantasy. You're smart, you know what you want. You wanted me from the start, me from the start. Whoa, 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 whoa. We vow to see the world. You say I am your girl. You take my hand and lead into kiss again.
Thank you very much, Paige. My goodness, it's easy to see why she has so many followers already, isn't it? And she would have been here in person tonight, but I understand she has another engagement, so I'm sure she's much in demand. And we wish you the very best with all of your success. Paige? Okay, we're going to have Jennifer Beechin now, and then we'll be calling on Pam Farrow.
Rejoice. Rejoice means to experience joy. One of Canada's most celebrated authors, Mr. Richard Wegemies, writes, "Our daily mission should be to rejoice." Wake up, not in a complete rush to get through daily tasks, but instead to wake up in stillness. To wake up with absolute clarity and perception. This was taken from chapter 3 of my non-fictional novel, What Comes from the Spirit, put together by editor Drew Hayden Taylor. My name is Jennifer Beechin of Markdale. I am a wife to my loving husband Robert, a mother to my 3 beautiful children, Trinity, Tesla, and Tobin. I am a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a granddaughter, a niece, a friend, a neighbor, and proud owner of my company, Fresh Start Duct Cleaning Services in Markdale. I promise you though, we are not the scammers calling you as soon as you get dinner on the table. As a mother, I wear many hats, as does any parent or caregiver. One second, I'm their cook, the next I'm helping with homework. Whoops, Tobin fell, now I'm a doctor. The author, Richard Wegemies, teaches us throughout his writings the importance of being still and meditating in the moment. Let's be real, with all that commotion, I wouldn't be calm. But his words have reminded me to slow down, enjoy the chaos. It's not going to be around forever. Richard Wegemies passed away in 2017, but thankfully the editor, Drew Hayden Taylor, took a lot of his writings from his manuscripts, his newspaper editorials, his social media accounts, his short stories, poems, and more. He put these into a novel, What Comes from the Spirit. Richard Wegemies' mentorship will continue and live on through others. The proceeds from this novel will go towards the Ontario Arts Foundation supporting Indigenous voices. While reading this novel, we learn that Richard Wegemies moved and rented a 300-acre farm with his adopted family. They had moved quite a lot, 3 times within 2 years. At just 11 years old, he was confused, torn, felt a whole bunch of emotions. But this move, are you ready for it, is right in our backyard, the beautiful Bruce County. It was on this farm that he learned the stillness and perfection of life that comes not from material, but from nature, as he sat in the tree watching the wood ducks hatch. This novel is a great reminder of the grateful life, of life's grateful gifts. The past 2 years, we have lived through a pandemic, which has taken a lot from us. But just like this novel is teaching us, the pandemic has taught us also. Our toddlers don't need a large, over-the-top birthday party. All they need is love, and for us to be in the moment. In chapter 2, we read, "Love is spiritual. There is no color, no gender, no skin, no history, no time, no right, no wrong, no better, no best, and certainly, most certainly, no politics. Our soul's mission is to learn to love." These words, especially right now, are very important. We need to love. When I volunteered to represent my Grey Highlands Chamber of Commerce, I did not realize the gift that this novel would give to my soul. When my husband and I opened our business, Fresh Start Duct Cleaning Services, we learned a lot about the toxins inside our houses. What this novel teaches us is about the toxins in our souls. We need to let them go. We need to be still in the moment, and we need to love. Please, if you find yourself a hot mess, missing out on life's simple pleasures, I highly recommend you run to your local library and pick up this novel. I promise you, it is a book that you will read again and again, and you may even play it while you wash the dishes. I would definitely love to say thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce myself, my family, my company, Fresh Start, and a chance to represent my community and Chambers of Grey Highlands. Most importantly, a big thank you to everyone behind the scenes. We see you and are grateful for you. Enough of the sappy Jen. Please vote for my community of Grey Highlands and this novel, What Comes from the Spirit, by author Richard Wegemies, edited by Drew Hayden Taylor. I will leave you with this from What Comes of the Spirit. Rejoice. Find yourself again. Find joy in a hug, conversation, walking on land, enjoying a cup of tea, the silence, or listening to your favorite song. Rejoice. Rejoice.
Thank you, Jennifer. Now there's a book that we can all use at any time, isn't it? The Simple Truths. And you presented them so beautifully, Jennifer. I love how all the contestants have made these books so relevant to their own lives and what it has meant to them to be involved in the contest. It's exactly what we were all hoping for. So Pam Farrow, please come. Last is not least, and we welcome you.
Wow, that's an impressive bunch of acts to follow. And obviously a lot of good books to read. And I hope I can do justice to my author in my efforts this evening. My name is Pam Farrow. I live in Southgate Township in a little village of Drumore with my husband Danny. We both run businesses there that serves all of Ontario from the middle of everywhere. Southgate Township goes basically from the borders of Durham, Mount Forest, to the other side of Dundalk, where they have a beautiful library, very much in the flavor of the train station and the location that it was. That library offers so many services to the community beyond books, programs to get kids out, to get people crafting, and to get people reading, listening, and parts of their community. I tend, honestly, to go a little bit more towards the Durham Mount Forest libraries, where I raise my kids on weekly visits. That has established a library habit that they use to this day. My mother uses the library to keep her volumes of books, her knowledge going, so it's a big part of a lot of lives. I have to admit I don't use the library a lot because it takes me about 3 months to read a book, and my favorite place to read it is in the bathtub, and that never ends well. So I tend to buy them, but so I also typically pick my books by the covers. I didn't have the privilege of doing that in this case. I picked the book totally by just going to the last one. I want a book when I open it to be totally an experience of no pre-engaged information. And as I present this book, I'm going to do the same. I do not want to tell you more than I have to about the actual story, about the actual characters, because I want you to meet them as I did, purely as surprisingly and engagingly as I did. After I read Emma Donoghue, I thought, wow, this is an amazing author. I'm going to read more of her. I admit that I read the book that she wrote called The Room, and it is one book I could not finish. It was so intensely written and so real and so pure. I just found it too frightening. That's something else when you can write that carefully and that real. For me, it was something I couldn't finish. This book, however, I could not put down. I would say it takes me 3 months to read the average book. I read this book in 3 days, and I lived every second. And what's peculiar about that is this book is written in 3 days. We can often read a book like this that is written over generations. This is an intense moment-by-moment behavior of a particular character at the end of the world, First World War, during a pandemic, and that character becomes so real, and the environment around her, the fear of the time, the passions of the time, the animosity of the time, you can taste it. As she goes through her day, the forensic method of the writing of what her day goes through is so real, you feel like you are part of the labor of each of the activity of the characters in the book. As new characters join the tale, and I mean, this is 3 days, it's there's probably 20 good characters in here, but the main few characters become so real. Over the time, she ties in the stories of not just where they're at in those 3 days, but what their history is and happening to them prior to. Watching a book unfold through a pandemic when we're living in one, the same trauma, the same working through a disastrous environment. I will say as much that this is based in a healthcare setting, so you can imagine what that would have been like in a turn of the century where we did not have inoculation and we did not have the ability to communicate through all of the methods that we do now. But so many of those scenarios were very similar to ours. It's set in Ireland, so there's a lot of political animosity, very similar. There's a lot of church influence that is in question, very similar. So there are a ton of aligning ideas between where this book is and where we are now. And in the 3 days it took me to read it, I felt like I'd been drawn in, lived her world, and came out the other side. Oddly enough, my mother read the book in 3 days. My daughter read the book in 3 days. Her boyfriend read it in 3 days. We'd all read it in about 2 weeks' time. Honestly, it just passed through the house because of what Christmas time. Everybody loved it. We all had a completely different reaction to the love tale, and I'm not telling you any more about that. So I did have some notes. I'm not much of a speaker, sorry. I wanted to thank this for happening. It's more involved than I expected. It has been a great pleasure to represent Southgate. Oh dear, my notes are over there, aren't they? Probably fell out. So anyway, oh, here we go. So I do want to encourage everyone to read this book. Yes, I think there's a lot of books here we could cover. If you want to be intensely involved in a kind of a mirrored scenario to our own lives now and come out of it with a different appreciation of what we have available to us, read it. If you just like a good, passionate, fast book, read it. If you love a good love story, read it. If you like politics, read it. And vote for it. That would be good too. Thank you.
That too was excellent, Pam. I just love the excitement that you generate. And there you are, folks. There are 7 champions, and they're amazing books. So it's going to be really hard to pick a favorite, but you might just have to either read all of them or at the very least go to southgrey.ca and read their analyses. And also vote, vote, vote. When you go to southgrey.ca, you will see a little tile that says Grey County Reads. All you have to do is tap that tile and it will take you right to where all of the various contestants have presented their books and illustrate very seamlessly how you can vote for your favorite, okay? Okay, well, I think we just have come to the time now where we need to give out some prizes. Remember earlier today I said that if you have indicated your interest in the contest and shared some information about it, your names would be in a draw. So the first draw is going to be made by Jennifer Murley. She has already actually done the draw, and so she knows who the winners of this draw will be. And Jennifer is the new chief librarian of the Grey Highlands Public Library. So I welcome you to come, Jennifer. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and let's see who is lucky.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm incredibly excited to be here tonight. This is, I think, one of the first events I was invited to after joining this community, and what better of an event for a chief librarian than to celebrate an evening of literature with the community. So tonight we have two prize winners. The first is Linda Teeter Van Elst. And Linda will be winning a free Canadian book. And our second winner tonight is Judith Linton. And again, Judith will be winning a Canadian book. And thank you for your participation in Grey County Reads.
Thank you, Jennifer, for coming tonight, too, to make those draws. I know both these women. They're incredible women, very great community leaders, and very talented in their own right. So I'm sure everybody will be very happy that they won. And we've got a couple more names for later, but right now, I want to tell you about the next part of the program, because it features a panel discussion about the power of story. And this panel tonight is going to be recorded as a special episode of the Grey Writers broadcast. And that will be available, as Tim says, wherever good broadcasts are found. So look for these Grey Writer broadcasts, because they're going to bring you some really great stuff. The leader of the discussion is Sean Ankenman. I've known Sean many years too, and I know how eloquent he is, and I'm just delighted that he's here. He was one of the previous Grey County champions, and he was defending a book called Son of a Trickster by Eden Robinson. And actually, Sean, I just went to your YouTube video to look at that recently, and again, excellent presentation. Sean is an ordained minister, and he's the proprietor of Highland Grounds Coffee Shop in Flesherton. And I just have to say, he bakes the best carrot cake ever, in case you want to put that away for future reference. And he thinks that his coffee shop, and it's so true, it provides the perfect opportunity for Sean to bring church into the community. And he will introduce you to his panelists tonight. It'll just take a couple little minutes to set that up. And looking so forward to this, Sean.
Okay, I'm
Are we
quiet
good?
now.
Hi. Thank you, Sharon, for the introduction, and thank you to the participants tonight for their promotion of the books. I had notes, and I kind of started with a thought, and then as things progressed, I was scratching things out and moving things around. But I want to wind back to the beginning. Sharon welcomed us to this sacred space. And as she was talking, I sort of was reflecting on where I wanted our conversation here to go. With me is Jeff Bowes, local entrepreneur, contractor, actor, writer. His book was the winner a couple of years ago in the Grey County Reads. A wonderful book. I'm a reader, and when I read a book that it leaves me laughing out loud, it says it's a pretty good book. And Jeff's definitely left me laughing out loud. And Shani Cato, who is a pediatrician in Owen Sound. I don't know much else about you, but I look forward to learning a bit about you tonight through our conversation. And our conversation is going to be about story. And it's story that takes me back 29 years to when I arrived in a community called Bella Coola with the First Nations people, the Nuhawk of the West Coast in BC. And they have what they call Smayusta. And Smayusta is the sacred story of the people, the tales that bring together the myths and the reality of the moment. And it was kind of a strange moment when Sharon made reference to Steve Charleston, a former bishop of the Diocese of Alaska in the Episcopalian Church of the United States. In 1993, when I arrived in Bella Coola, part of my prep was taking courses at Vancouver School of Theology, and one of the teachers was Bishop Steve Charleston. Steve also was part of the lore of that community, where he once made the statement of, the Bible is our history, and one of the native elders from the nation of Haisla stood up and said, that's not my story. That's not your story. That story belongs to people who lived a long time ago. There is another story that needs to be told. And it began a conversation. The gentleman who stood up and spoke was of the family of the Robinsons and relative of the extended family of Eden Robinson, whose book I championed last year in the Grey County Reads. So it kind of all ties together in a moment, for people bear with me. About almost 20 years ago, I was riding my bike in a Manitoba town across a dam and passed a gentleman, and I thought, he looks familiar. I stopped, I turned around, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but are you Thompson Highway? And the gentleman said, why, yes, I am. And it began a friendship that over the summer I was able to go and bring him to service clubs and to community meetings, and got to know Thompson and his husband very well, and was honored to call them friends. And after a lunch one day, we were leaving the meeting room, and Thompson said, oh, I've got to get to the University of Brandon. It's the first Aboriginal Writers Festival. I'm the keynote speaker. And I said, oh, how are you getting there? And he goes, you're going to drive me. I said, okay, sure. Drove him down to Brandon, the 40 kilometers, pulled up in front of the university, said, well, I'll come back in a couple hours and pick you up. And Thompson said, no, you won't. Come on in with me. I said, this is an invitation-only event, Thompson. I can't just come in. He says, relax. You'll be my security. Just walk behind me the whole night. So I was game for it, so that was fine. In the middle of the hall, we're talking, and I mean, it was a gathering of many First Nations writers. One of them was Eden Robinson, and Thompson introduces me to Eden and then says, oh, this is Sean, my security. Eden loses it. She's like, why do you have security? I'm a more important writer than you. You're no more important than me. Why do you have security? And Thompson's going, shh, quiet. Sean's here uninvited, but he's my security, so I can get him through all of this. And, it led to my choice for the book last year. And the main reason was also because I believe in the power of story and bringing forward First Nations stories. My original intention was to begin with an example of that from Bella Coola, where many generations have told the story of Raven being in a place 100 kilometers from saltwater in Bella Coola, 500 meters up the side of a mountain, where Raven got into a canoe in saltwater and traveled down through the valley of Bella Coola, and along the way picked up other mythic beings, and then went out into what's now the Pacific Ocean, to the land of the salmon, which is in the legend described as a vast, grassy, undulating plain. Everyone went, yeah, nice story, guys, whatever, until the year, I think it was 1992, when two scientific expeditions, one was an archaeological dig where Raven made salt water, the other was a coastal core sampling along the outer coast in BC, and they proved many pieces of the story. One that where Raven started was at saltwater 25,000 years ago. It was lower, it was on the inlet, and also that out at the outer coast there was a vast grassy undulating plain 25,000 years ago. It taught me in that moment the power of story, the power of this sacred thing that we need to tell, and the importance of sharing our stories. And we've heard much of that tonight. The connectedness of all of this comes when we recognize that our stories bring us together as a humanity, as a people, but more importantly, it also brings us together as a global community, the whole 6 degrees of separation. Mm-hmm. So I don't really have a theme tonight. I just want to let my two guests here share the power of story and their first-person experiences of that. And I don't know, should I flip a coin, heads, tails, and see who speaks first?
I think it'll be Jeff.
Okay. We are agreed. Jeff, you're up.
Hear about your story. Okay, story. In general, I agree that it shares a universality. To me, that is achieved through personal detail in a story. If you want to find the greater truth, write as personally as you can, and then it will come out. This I believe it's been borne out in my life. Images that I have either read or seen are all detailed, and they transport me to an idea or a concept that I didn't have before. Other story is more obvious. I read a wonderful book called Steal Away Home, which is the story of a black slave girl who was taken to Niagara Falls to work as a maid with the family that went there on vacation. And she managed to row across underneath Niagara Falls and escape. A long and age-old story, but because it was firsthand, the details mattered. We knew about, we all know about the tribulations of getting here. We all imagine how sore their feet must have been, how tired they must have been. But when somebody actually gives you the day-to-day, that even walking across grass hurt, I get a much stronger sense of the story. So I guess I would say that the angel is in the details. And now I really want to hear the story of a pediatrician.
So I am very blessed to be here with everyone and listening to your passion. I was, through a series of rather strange events, I was invited here by Tim Riley, your sound person extraordinaire. And I wasn't given any information about what I would be asked to do. And so this is all very exciting to me, and it's unfolding as I speak.
No pressure.
For sure. But I think that writing is certainly a very powerful way for humans to experience each other. And what is more exciting and more fulfilling than meeting each other in ways that our lives don't necessarily make it easy to do. But if you can sit down with a book in the privacy of your home, wherever you find you're most comfortable, then you open yourself, you bare your soul, and you can allow yourself to participate in another reality, get another perspective. And so I absolutely agree that reading is a beautiful way to experience what might not necessarily be a readily very available experience. And I'm happy to be here with you to explore this even more.
You actually gave a good segue into a piece I wanted to touch on, and that is, in our area there is a book entitled Broken Shackles, which was reprinted a number of years ago now, that's part of the story of the black settlements that came to Grey County in the wake of the War of 1812 along as the terminus of the Underground Railway. And we do have, as part of our history here, the Old Durham Road Cemetery and Negro Creek Road, and places where black settlers came early and were part of the history, part of the stories that then kind of faded away. And that ability to kind of go back and tell those stories, to me, is important. And our original plan was to meet in February during Black History Month, and that was, I wanted to be part of our conversations. And partially, I take it in a kind of personal way because I've been privileged to be in ministry with the folks down at Heritage Community Church in Collingwood. That is the historic black church for that community, the folks that settled in the area working in the community, and the church has been there 150 years in the same spot, reaching out to the community. And I think that connectedness to our story and the experiences of what's around us and being able to lift it up and tell it and retell it and celebrate it and share it and perpetuate it, I think is valuable. And I wonder what, kind of how you guys will engage in that and think of it as well. Jeff?
It's, well, you see, I'm still learning about black history around here and black history in general. When I think of stories, there aren't a lot of books that have impressed me with the day-to-day understanding of this Underground Railroad. Bear in mind, I'm a boy from Victoria. I didn't see any black people until I went to Seattle when I was like 12. So it all started late. It all had a huge curiosity for me. I was blessed, to move to Montreal and meet black people, but they didn't lay their story on me, as it were. I absorbed it, I suppose. But I started by saying I'm still learning this, and the reason I say that is because I also recently read that great book, whose name I've forgotten, written by Bonita up in Owen Sound. Mm-hmm. It's about the Emancipation Festival, and so I read that, and it led me to go there, and there I got a whole bunch of other stories that, now an old bearded white guy had no idea of.
And you come from Victoria, who's one of the grand figures of Victoria's history, is Douglas, who was black. But we don't talk about him being black.
No, well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that growing up.
Which is, the hidden layer of history. So,
Obviously, reading books is one way to immerse yourself into another reality. It is going to be guided by what immediately speaks to you. But beyond books is, as I'm sure you're well aware, a long history of history being told
by the bearded white guys.
By not necessarily white guys, but by bearded men, yes. But I speak of the humongous wealth of oral history that you would have heard from your Aboriginal brothers, the amazing history you might have heard from your Caribbean counterparts. I mean, I was born in Canada of Jamaican parents who moved independent of each other to Canada at different times, all in a bid to have a better life, and then came together, made a family, and then decided to move back to Jamaica with their family, with that family, I being the youngest of 4 children. Having been raised in Jamaica, which was a beautiful childhood, I moved to Canada as a young adult to further my postgraduate training to become a pediatrician, to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Ew.
And funny joke. When I went home during one of my trips, to Saskatchewan to see my parents, I was stopped by the customs officer who was wanting to know what I was carrying back, because I must be carrying something back, because that's what Jamaicans do, apparently, according to his mindset. And I said, he says, where are you coming from? I said, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. He says, Saska, where? And, I have learned, or I've had to revisit how beautiful the Patois dialect is in terms of telling a story. We spoke of all these wonderful authors and how well their command of English allowed them to tell that story that they wanted to tell. And I am constantly amazed. I will go back to my history, my childhood, and I'm constantly amazed at how well Jamaicans can tell a story, the nuances of our speech, our language, our melded being. The motto of Jamaica is, out of many, one people.
Nice. Very nice. The oral tradition, I think, is something we often overlook.
Yes.
And we become so print-oriented that when I started in ministry with the Newhalkin people in the West Coast, we used to sit around after church service on Sunday night and drink tea and coffee, and the elders would share the stories, and we'd laugh and cry, and it just poured forth.
Right.
And I liken it back to the story I shared with Raven of, here is the story, and the white skeptics go, I don't think that could happen. The scientists say there's no proof. But as they dug further, the proof came out, and the strength of the story was reinforced and lifted up and truly celebrated. And I think that's a piece we often overlook. That first person narrative, that storytelling,
absolutely,
culturally is so vital and wonderful.
And the other thing we overlook are boring stories. That is to say, a lot of people will suck the air out of a room with their story. It's difficult to get away from that kind of assault, if you will. But it's becoming, I would say, a little more predominant than it was. I blame social media, maybe. I don't really know. But, I grew up with a few boring war stories from people who had been in the war, and I should have listened to them. But they were boring to me at that time, which that's a factor, I thought Macbeth was pretty boring when I first read it. After we had after the murder, I just thought it was boring. But you grow into these things, and I find that as long as we're talking about oral tradition, some people's oral bullshit just drives me mental. So to the point where I get nervous about being on an airplane now for a long flight, in case I get the guy who wants to tell me the story of his wife's hysterectomy or something like that. It drives me mental. Anyway, it's another aspect of story that I believe is overlooked.
That's why on flights I always carry a book. Just pull it out and read. So.
Doesn't help me. I gotta tell you. My sister, did I mention?
Yeah. I've learned to tune people out. Yeah. I think as we wind it back kind of to what I'd like to share and say.
But we digress.
Not a digression. It's a progression. That I see our task as in humanity. Our task tonight is to celebrate story, to share it, to promote it, to encourage people to be part of the story. I mean, when you mentioned boring war stories, I used to sit with my grandfather and listen to his stories from World War II and kind of went, yeah, okay, whatever, Grandpa, until one day I was reading a book about the corvettes and the service in the North Atlantic that affirmed one of his stories that seemed so out there and bizarre, and suddenly it was like, oh my God, it's in print. It actually did happen that way. And it changed my perspective. And I think that informed me as a youth, that as I approached people, I've encountered some amazing people in my journey, World War I vets and people who had incredible stories to tell, who are not people you would necessarily sort of lift up and say, this is, an amazing individual. Right. They truly were amazing individuals, but not the community recognition. And I think of a gentleman in Kingston, I met Stan, and his comment was, we just do the best we can living our lives and looking after people. And he had such an amazing and rich life, and I've seen that over and over. And I think that's the story. That's what we need to be about, is to tell the stories and truly share them so that we're not hiding things away anymore.
I think another, just to add, I think we should possibly consider extending ourselves beyond the subject matter that usually draws us in and look at other subject matter that might speak to another people's experience. And so, you see, I believe that the world of books is a vast, large world, but there's so much world beyond that. And there's so much world beyond our history, I shouldn't say our history, our current day. 2,500 years ago, Raven did so and so and so, and that oral tradition through the years was trusted by those peoples. And now we're looking for proof. But how much more could we avail ourselves of if we weren't necessarily needing our what we consider to be evidence? There's so much more world that we would be limiting ourselves if we weren't allowing ourselves to experience it in other ways. So by all means, I would encourage others to look at books that you wouldn't necessarily have thought of looking at.
You circled it back to something Steve Charleston said back in the 90s at this VST, and he said it's about myth. And myth is not necessarily factual, but it's true. Myth is a truth that gets shared and offered forward, but it might not be historical fact.
That's right.
And I think that's the piece we need to sometimes remember, is that the story is, the smayusta, to go back to the Nuhak people, is that incredible sacred story that we're part of, that we need to tell.
That's right.
So, any other thoughts?
Well, I think we've talked long enough. People will be getting up and getting sandwiches before too long.
Well, I thank both of you. It's a pleasure to meet you. It's
sure is,
a pleasure
Sean.
to spend some time in conversation.
It's been terrific meeting you.
Lovely meeting you too, gentlemen. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
Hey, we'll see you again.
And thanks to Ron and Sharon for putting this evening together, and thank you to our participants who have promoted their books. We look forward to the outcome of Grey County Reads 2022. And read the books, and go back and read some of the other books from previous years. I highly recommend Jeff's book. It was amazing. So thank you. And thank you, Tim.
That was really
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sharon.
Maybe if I could just get the podium here for another little while.
Yep.
We've got a few concluding important things to do. Thank you to the panel. My goodness, that could be a whole podcast in itself. You really brought up some very interesting ideas. Shani, I was interested that you were from Jamaica. My niece Nancy landed today in Jamaica for a week. So I'll tell her about your contribution. And thank you so much. Nobody would know that you didn't realize what you're supposed to talk about. You're extremely well-spoken, and really appreciated your perspective. Thanks, Sean. You did a great job leading that. And excuse me, Jeff, but you can't just go too far away because we have a little surprise for you. Could you just come up here, please? We thought it was about time that we acknowledged the literary contributions to the community that this fellow has made. Not only was he a Grey County Reads champion some time back, but he had a book that Robert Ian Torno championed that was the winning book, and it was called Open Up the Wall, Revelations of a Renovations Contractor, and it won, I believe it was a 2020 competition that it won?
Yes.
Yes.
When the pandemic started.
Yes. And also, Jeff has produced some very interesting interviews based on Grey County Reads YouTube videos, and he's just a terrific literary support in the community, and we felt it was time to recognize that. And so thank you for your participation in the panel as well. And this comes to you, I can tell you that it's a gift certificate to Artemisia Cheese and Fine Foods. And so during your next renovation project, which I understand is underway and hopefully will lead to more books, you'll just need some of that great food to keep you going.
And I'll take you.
Oh, that sounds good too.
Thank you, Sharon.
You're very
Thanks,
welcome.
everybody.
I think it comes from South Grey Publishing to you, but I'm the messenger and I get to present it to you. So
Thank you. I'll share it with y'all.
And speaking of Robert Ian Torno, I wonder if he would come forward for a minute. Robert, as we said, he championed the book that Jeff had written, and his impassioned championship of the book and defense of the book caused it to be the winner that year. And I just want you to know that Jeff is the South Grey Museum Curator Emeritus and is currently... Sorry, what did I say? Did I get that wrong?
Rob.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Robert.
It's been a long night.
It has been a long night, but I remember you very, very clearly when you worked at the museum, and it's just a delight to see you again. And so tonight, I understand also that you were apprenticing as a Ferrari mechanic?
I am.
Is that currently going? My goodness.
It's,
now there's a curve.
It is 20 years ago.
Can maybe come here?
Yes. Well, firstly, hello, everybody. People may know me as Museum Rob. They know me as a lot of other colorful things as well, because so few people can pronounce Yantorno here in Grey County. I love this community very, very deeply. I love Grey County. I love books, but can't read them because of my ADHD. So I had to listen to Jeff Bowes Open Up the Wall. And it was an honor to represent that book in 2020. And yeah, it's just so nice to be here. This is a special thing. I love that this exists. And if you're out there, I love you specifically. So it's my pleasure to announce 2 more winners of... Ron was telling me a pile of used 8-track cassette tapes or Canadian books, whichever is subject to availability. So we have Barbara Hege, congratulations. And we also have Sue Mansky. Enjoy your 8 tracks. I believe it's the Bee Gees that's on the top. Thank you.
Well, again, I know both of those individuals who have won the prize. Barb Hege is an author in her own right and a beautiful writer. And Sue is one of our American friends who is tuning in tonight, and is an artist and just a beautiful person with her own ideals of writing her stories for her grandchildren and her family. And that whole discussion about the importance of story is really relevant. So, just a couple things we want you to remember. That in this Grey County Reads contest, the local authors and their books will continue to be featured on southgrey.ca, and content from this winter's competition, as well as this recorded event, will also be published throughout the year. And you can be looking forward to a Grey County Reads wrap-up, scheduled tentatively for the fall, with the Grey Roots Museum and Archives. So stay tuned for more information about that on the pages of southgrey.ca. Visit the Grey County Reads YouTube page for video interviews with past champions and authors, and don't forget that all of these books are readily available at your local library. So get reading, folks, and vote, vote, vote. We need your votes. And by the way, you don't have to live in Grey County to vote for this competition, I discovered through Ron. You can vote wherever you might be listening, and hopefully you will raise the awareness of Canadian authored books in other parts of the world, because we have some amazing writers here to be celebrated, and I think that's a great capacity for YouTube to introduce that. So now, to conclude my particular part of tonight's proceedings, I'd like to leave you with a little poem that captures the special magic found in reading. Thanks to my cousin, Jolene Copeland, for sharing on Facebook a poem attributed to Julia Donaldson called I Opened a Book. I opened a book, and in I strode. Now nobody can find me. I've left my chair, my house, my road, my town, and my world behind me. I'm wearing the cloak. I've slipped on the ring. I've swallowed the magic potion. I've fought with a dragon, dined with a king, and dived in a bottomless ocean. I opened a book and made some friends. I shared their tears and laughter and followed their road with its bumps and bends to the happily ever after. I finished my book, and out I came. The cloak can no longer hide me. My chair and my house are just the same, but I have a book inside me. So I urge you to take advantage of this Grey County Reads contest to put 7 excellent Canadian books inside of you, and may the best defense win. And now we have some concluding comments from Ron Barnett, whose vision started it all.
Yeah, I have another round of thank yous to give out. First of all, I want to thank everybody who presented tonight. I have 7 books on my reading list that I have to get to now. I want to thank the many local businesses for their support, and I encourage you to show them your support for their contributions to Grey County Reads and this Winter Book Fest. Alex Ruff, MP for Bruce Grey Owen Sound, Artemisia Cheese and Fine Foods, Bayview Escarpment Fine Furniture and Cabinetry, Bill Walker, MPP for Bruce Grey Owen Sound, The Bookstore, Chapman's Ice Cream, The Color Jar and Timothy Dick Bookbinding, Colorpic's Website Design Services, Culpepper's Pita and Coffee Time, Grey Roots Museum and Archives, Leaking Ambience Studio, The Market Shop, Mullen Bookkeeping, Southeast Grey Support Services, Speaking Volumes, Books and Audio, Susan's Delicatessen, Tamming Law, and Tasty Treats. And if I've forgotten anybody, forgive me, please. There are so many to thank. I want to also thank Tim Riley of Leaking Ambience Studio up there in the loft for the production of this event. Tim is the technical genius behind the scenes and can be seen at many local community events, working the soundboard and computers, pulling all of the puppet strings, and making things run smoothly. Please, if you see him on the street, give him your appreciation, pat him on the head, tickle him under the arms. He likes that. Thank you as well to the Annesley United Church, which is a registered charitable institution that rents out this beautiful facility for cultural events like this one. Its purpose is to benefit the community with comfortable and practical facilities for celebrations, business training, funeral receptions, and other personal and business needs. And if you need to reach them, please call the church office at 519-986-3147 for your own event. Now I want to introduce one of Grey County Read's signature sponsors, who will give us a little story to end the evening. Kevin Land has been writing and producing plays for over 40 years with too many productions to name individually right now. He has taught playwriting to primary and secondary school students. He has worked with his wife, Mary Jo, who is a psychotherapist, as well as with a distinguished writing team at McMaster University on a variety of projects with the themes of peace, healing, and coping with trauma. He continues to work on screenplays and looks for new production ideas all the time. I could go on and on and on, but I won't. He is also the owner of Speaking Volumes, Books, and Audio in Flesherton. Here is Kevin Land.
Thank you, Ron. As you know, we've sponsored this event since its inception and are very pleased to continue to do so. And we look forward to doing this for many more years. Rather than do an infomercial, which Tim suggests that I do, I'm going to read a Facebook post. Those who follow us on Facebook will see that we don't do typical advertisements for the bookstore. I tend to do creative pieces. So what I'm going to read is the, once I can locate it, the one that seemed to start it off, where I actually started to get likes. I wrote it last July after a holiday in Victoria, and well, you can hear it from here. Some of you may have noticed that the store was closed last week while I was out of town on holiday. I've always believed that one way or another, we always pay for taking time off, and this case was no different. Apparently before I left, I, or one of my customers, was leafing through The Trouble with Tribbles on the sci-fi shelf and replaced the book without closing it. 3 of them escaped. As any Star Trek fan knows, tribbles are not a harmful life form, but they are known to be mischievous. It seems that in my absence, they raced through the store, liberating as many of their fictional counterparts as they could. Nearby, Triffids were released, along with H.G. Wells' Martians from War of the Worlds. Fortunately, the first book they opened was Solzhenitsyn, the Gulag Archipelago, and they decided that this planet wasn't worth conquering and went back into their book. The Tribbles then went into the classics section, and in no time at all, Frankenstein, Dracula, and Mr. Hyde were free to terrorize the Isles. Chaos ensued. No inhabitant of any literary genre was safe during the onslaught. The pods from the invasion of the body snatchers infected Don Quixote, and he elected not to tilt at windmills, but stayed at home and had paella instead. Rumpelstiltskin screamed for anyone to let down her hair so he could climb to the top shelf, but fortunately, there were no takers. I would have worried that this mayhem might have resulted in the mother of all monsters, Grendel from Beowulf, being liberated, but as luck would have it, we don't sell much Old English lit, and our copy was tucked at the back of a shelf. When I opened this store Monday morning, the place was in shambles. I found Pennywise trying to claw his way into a bio of Marcel Marceau. I had to utter a spell to send Voldemort back from whence he came before a semblance of order was restored. I remain unsure whether or not the Invisible Man is still loose. The good news is that things are back to normal and we can once again receive customers. For my part, lesson learned. My advice to our customers is to remember that whenever you open a book, you really never know what might come out of it. Thank you. I should also mention that for the month of April, 50% of all sales in the store will be donated to the Red Cross for humanitarian relief in Ukraine. Thank you for listening.
Hi, it's me again. That just about wraps it up for tonight, but I have one last thank you to make. Last certainly, but not least, I want to thank Sharon Sinclair for hosting this Winter Book Fest. She has done a wonderful job, as always. You can follow Sharon on Facebook, where she shares her poetry often, her photography, and spiritual messages. Or you may just admire her from afar, as I do. Sharon, could you come up here and accept this little gift? This is sort of the best of Markdale.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Oh wow, I will enjoy exploring this for sure. Thank you. It really was my pleasure to take part in this event. It was a wonderful way to give back from having been the champion of the first in 2018, the first event of this nature. And Kevin, thank you. That was really entertaining what you did right there. And also it made me remember, I forgot to say that one of the perks about voting is that with every vote you cast, it entitles you to an eventual draw as a winner of some audio. It's gone from me now. Speaking Volumes, Books and Audio, proprietor Kevin Land, gift certificates. So there's another little perk for you, and those prizes will be drawn at the end of the contest, around the end of April sometime. So thank you, Kevin, for your incredibly generous sponsorship of this. It's really terrific. And good night, everybody. Stay safe and keep reading.
I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago. I've changed for the better this time. I thought I would never be fine. I strive just to say I'm alright, and for the first time in a long time I'm alright. I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago, but all will be okay. I move on each and every day. The past is where it stays, way back a year ago.